Hello, I'd like you to take note of my appearance as I walk up to the table tonight. There's a reason for this. Good evening. I have a story to tell tonight. I'm not sure if I'm even going to post this. I'm going to make it tonight, and then I'm going to give it some prayer and a lot of thought before I actually make it posting it. But I plan to post it unless I really get a strong feeling or indication that I should not, through some prayer. This is pretty tough for me. But it actually has to do with visitation and a message of somebody that I've made videos on. Yeah, I'm a little edgy on this one. Somebody that passed on recently, my girlfriend that I love very much and spent a number of years with. Right here at this table, we used to eat our dinners and have our drinks and laugh and listen to music. A lot of good times and good memories with that person right at this table not that long ago. And of course we all think we're all going to live to be 100, don't we? So that when we go, it's our time to go. And it's not such a bad thing. It's hard, but it's not so bad when somebody you love dies of old age. They had a full life. But it's hard when somebody dies young and suddenly somebody you love very much. And sadly, I think a lot of you know this. I don't know where to start with this. You know, a visitation with a message. It was a visitation with a message, definitely. And a message that I kind of really needed to hear. And only she could tell it to me where it would matter. And she did. You know, I've had, before anybody jumps to the conclusions that these things happen to me all the time, and I make dreams into, 3 times in my life to this date, I have thought that a dream was something more than a dream. And all 3 times, just now 3 times, and I'm well more than a half century old, 3 times. That's not very much. So usually I write dreams off as just dreams. But this last time was the 3rd time. And it was not a dream. It didn't have the qualities of a dream. And there's more leading up to it. It's not just about that. And I'll tell you the story and see if we can give some glory to God and learn a few things through this. I got a toothache going on and the jaw hurts. It always happens during a holiday. It's Labor Day weekend. Dentist is out for 4 days. So I'm hoping the antibiotics work. So I'm a little dampened. There's another reason for it too. Yes, it could be. This could have been a visitation, a real visitation, as I believe it was. Or could the psychologist have 1,000 ways? Not 1,000, but actually I've looked into this. The psychological argument that this is just a construct of my id, my emotions, what I'm going through, the grieving process. And then there are a lot of other people that believe, no, these things are really what they appear to be, and I'm of that camp. The first time this happened to me, all 3 times was a visitation. All 3 times that I've had a dream that I thought was not a dream but something else, was when somebody I loved, or in one case liked a lot, a good friend of mine, dies, and I'm grieving hard, and they appear to me. The friend, it was 2 years later, almost 2 years later, 1 or 2 years later, when I was 17, but about maybe a year and a half. And after he was killed suddenly, he was 18 years old, and I was 15 or so when he died. A good friend of mine, Brian Hunt, long gone to be with the Lord. I know that because I was taken up into heaven, and that's another story. But he appeared to me, and he told me about my life to come. And everything he said has come true. Except when he finished, he told me it was all going to work out for you. He felt very concerned for me. And he was wearing a white robe, had shoulder-length brown hair, and talked to me about my life. And the second time this happened to me was about 1.5 years ago with my mother, and she was also in a white robe, and she looked glorious. Young, again, she was 86 when she died, and looked like 86, You know how it is. It ain't pretty, but, the soul shines from within. You can always see when you look into the eyes, you see the person that's always been there. That doesn't age, does it? Their voice doesn't age a lot either sometimes, but the eyes too. Eternal spark. Yeah, she looked glorious, and she was also in heaven. That's a moth. You see something fluttered around here. No, it's not a ghost, it's a moth, I think. Maybe it's not. I think it's a moth. Yeah, she looked glorious. She was definitely in heaven. And I told that story, I don't know how many times. Now the third time this happened to me 2 or 3 nights ago. That's why I'm telling it. Whether I post it or not, I don't know. I'm going to tell it while it's fresh. And she wasn't wearing any white robes. And she wasn't in heaven. I don't know. She wasn't in hell either. I don't know where she's at, but I don't think she's not in hell. I'll get to that. Sorry, I have a toothache. Well, I'll tell you what led up to this first, and then I'll get to it. All right. For about the past 2 months, I've been waking up every night at between 3 and 4 a.m. Waking up feeling strongly that I wasn't alone. Hearing noises and just feeling like I wasn't alone in a room, definitely. Always 3 in the morning. Between 3 and 4. Usually, about 3:15 or so a.m. And I live alone, completely alone. I don't even have a dog anymore. And so this goes on for it's been about 2 months. Every single night. It doesn't matter if I got to bed late or I got to bed early. I wake up between 3 or 4. Well, a couple of nights ago, I woke up about 3:15 or so a.m. as usual, feeling I'm not alone. I'm definitely not alone in here. And I don't know, I just wake up, sound asleep, and I wake up. Well, I managed to get back to sleep this time. And as soon as I fell asleep, it's a moth, where you start thinking anything. I don't know how it looks in the camera, but as soon as I fell asleep, I found myself in a place that was pitch black. That's why I said, nope, how I walk in here. I mean, I was in a black void beneath, all around me, pitch black. And out of the blackness, Jen walked up to me. And she looked like she always looked to me. She didn't look frightening. She was dressed the way I remember her always dressed. The same clothes, kind of distinctive. She was kind of a hippie girl, hippie chick. The same clothes. She looked the same. And she looked healthy. She didn't look ghastly. She wasn't frightening looking. But she just walked right up out of the darkness and walked right up to me. And she said to me, this is what she said. She said, Tim, you need to move on with your life. And I turned away from her. I went, oh. I turned away from her. Not because I was frightened, but because it was her. I mean, it wasn't like a dream. I've had a couple of dreams of her. It's a dream. You can tell the difference. No, this was her in person. It looked like her, and it was her voice. And it broke my heart to see her. I turned away not because I was frightened, but because I was very emotional to see her again. And she seemed frustrated. She had a look of frustration on her, like, not like she was angry with me, maybe a little frustrated. That's what I got. And she said, that's all she said, "Tim, you need to move on with your life." And she was still walking towards me when I turned away. And that's when as soon as I turned away, I woke up. And I wished I hadn't turned away so that she could have come up. She looked like she had more to tell me. That's what I thought, that she had more to say, but I don't know. But I did get her. It was her voice. It was very clear and wasn't angry. She just said, "Tim, you need to move on with your life." Like that kind of tone. Or try to move on with your life now. Yeah, she said, "Tim, you need to move on with your life." That's what she said. Because I've been mourning and grieving quite a lot. And just grieving. That very day, the morning before that, the day before that, you know how it is when you grieve hard for somebody? You think you're all right for a day, then the next day could be anything. You might find some little thing of theirs, some insignificant thing that takes you back to a time with them. And it just, oh God, it just ambushes you. And I broke down and sobbed and sobbed. And I will tell you that I did ask God, because when my mom appeared to me, it gave me closure to the point, not that I'm forgetting them or my love for them is diminished, but grief closure of the grieving so that I can pick up my life and move forward, because God didn't put us here just to grieve. It's okay to grieve. Jesus said, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted." So people grieve, the loss of their children or their spouse or friends or parents, people they love. And Jesus has a kind heart for that. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. That's in the Beatitudes. And he saw me grieving, and I prayed, "If it be thy will, Lord, please let her come to me like my mother did." And I appreciate it, because I think God allows it. I think God has to sign off on it, you know what I mean? He doesn't want to mess up his plan here for us, I think. Or these things would be happening all the time. So I think God blessed it and allowed her to come, because I asked him to, more than once. And I knew that maybe it wouldn't happen, and I was okay with that. But it doesn't hurt to ask. Because when my mom came to me like she did, and she took me up into heaven, where she was at. And a lot of that, I didn't tell this in that story, but I only remembered the end of it when I had to come back to earth. But there was a lot more before that I wasn't allowed to keep. I just know that. I think she gave me a tour, quite frankly. And then I only remember actively is when we got to the ledge where she took my hand and she spoke to me. It was her voice, and she looked wonderful. And she said, "It has to be this way. Our separation from our loved ones." I knew exactly what she meant. It has to be this way, that we're separate from people we love who have passed on. And she took my hands and she said, "Just for now." And looked me right in the eyes and held my hands. And I could feel her soft hands, little woman hands, these big mitts. And then she let go and she went up and I went down to earth. I was allowed to remember that part of it, but there was more to it. Now with her, Jen, and if anybody sees this and it offends anybody, or they don't think I should have it up here, let me know. You have my apologies. I will take it down. I don't think that would be the case, or I won't post it. As it is, I'm going to pray over this and give it a little time before I do post, make it public. But I wanted to make this video now anyway. I did ask God if it was okay to let her come to me, and she did. But she wasn't wearing white robes. like my friend Brian was, like my mother was. And Brian didn't appear to me till almost 2 years after he died. And my mom, it would be about 6 months when I had a visitation with a message. And Brian, I had a visitation with him with a message. He gave me a message. He told me all about my life to come right up to when I'm the age I am now. And he said I'd go through a lot of hardships. And this message told me, just remember, Tim, it's going to work out for you in the end. Well, Jen had a message for me, and in her typical way, and it looked just like her. She didn't look ghostly. She didn't look pale. She didn't look dead. It looked just like her, in living color, vibrant too. But she came out of a black void. I don't know if that's where she's at, or if that's just the place where we met, if that's what happened. Maybe it's a psychological, maybe there's an explanation. I don't believe that. I believe that is what it was. I think that sometimes when we're asleep, we're in a state where we can be, that's where they can reach us. And I think that's why I was waking up at 3 o'clock every morning, thinking that I wasn't alone in that room. Because usually I sleep very sound, honestly. But I think it was because she was trying to contact me, because at that time, I don't know why, in my sleep, but this time she was successful, and she got through, and I saw her. She walked right out of the darkness, like behind me, walked right up, and I could see her as clear as you could see me, in living color. And she just said, Tim, you need to move on with your life now. That's what she said. And she was still walking towards me when she said it. I wished I did go like this. I couldn't look at her. It was too emotional. She didn't frighten me. It was just very emotional. Because I would have liked to have heard more. And I think she had more to say, but I don't know. So there's that. Waking up every night, past couple of months, 3 in the morning, between 3 and 4. Always. With the distinct feeling that I wasn't alone, and I would say some prayers and try to get back to sleep if I could. Well, a few nights ago I got back to sleep, and it seemed like it was instant. I found myself in a black void, and then she walked right out of the void and walked right up to me. I could see her from feet to head, full body. She didn't float. It seemed like she walked up to me, but when she spoke, I don't recall. I just heard it. I heard her loud and clear, perfectly clear. And it just sounded like her. And she sounded like she had something she really wanted me to get it through my head, that I need to move on with my life now. And I wonder if God said, you need to go to him, that he needs this. And I'm like, after I woke up and I thought about it, I'm like, what life? I don't have a life anymore. The people I love the most are gone. Right down to my dog. But we don't know what God's plans are for us. Maybe it's just that I tell this. For whatever. But I do believe it doesn't hurt to ask God if you're grieving, if it's in his blessing, in his will, to allow this to happen. And it happens to a lot of people, I've read. So I will say that I've had a great deal of closure and comfort from it. Honestly, a good amount of healing came from it for me. I mean, I think I would have healed eventually, but to have her tell me that herself, and to see that she was well, and if she was, all right, here's some takeaways. If she was in hell, she wouldn't have come to me to give me a message. That message was obviously intended for my own well-being, wasn't it? You need to move on with your life now. That's the kind of thing you say to somebody to try to help them to pick themselves up and get through whatever God has for us. If she was in hell, she wouldn't have been allowed to come here and do that. And was she in heaven? Like my mom and Brian, they were in heaven. they were wearing white robes, and it was a heavenly place. Maybe she's, I don't know, maybe it's in purgatory, or maybe she's in heaven, and but she's not in hell. And she, obviously, another takeaway, she's aware of my grieving and my prayers. Somebody was, if not her, somebody said, you need to go to him. And I think this 3 o'clock in the morning thing for the past month or two was her trying to do that. I'm just trying to say the takeaways from this. So if you're grieving hard, don't feel afraid to ask God to allow something like this to happen, because it can be a blessing, honestly. Make sure it has God's blessing on it when you pray for it. Jesus took, like I said, the Beatitudes. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. It was an important enough theme to Jesus Christ that he included it in his Beatitudes. He takes note of the lowly and the brokenhearted and those that mourn. They definitely have God's ear. Definitely. So don't be afraid to ask if you need the help, and I needed it. I've had people tell me that I need to get help with my grieving, because it's a half year later, almost. Yeah, it's a half year later, honestly. In a couple of days, and I'm still grieving to where find myself sobbing, not in front of people, but sobbing hard. Got a headache, runny nose, eyes hurt, that level of grieving, and just being depressed. Is there anything else? No, I wish that I hadn't turned away in case that there was more to this. But maybe that was it. She got her message out to me loud and clear. So, Tim, you need to move. Tim, you need to move on with your life now. That was it. So I'm grateful to her for that, and that she did. Remember, I've been all these prayers and things. They've been heard. It didn't fall on deaf. God heard it, and she heard it. So there's a takeaway for you. For those that say you shouldn't pray for your loved ones that have passed on. Yes, pray to God, definitely, and Jesus Christ, and talk to them and pray to them. You don't pray to them, you talk to them. Like I've said, how to pray for the deceased that you love from your heart. Tell them, they hear you. This is evidence that they hear you, and that God hears your prayers too. So, pray from your heart, talk from your heart. I guess that's all. So, if I put this out there, I hope it'll help somebody out. I'm kind of iffy because it's very personal. Like I said, her and I sat at this table hundreds of times and had our dinners and our drinks and our laughter and our music, and had company here at this table together, right where I'm sitting. So, and she liked my ghost stories. I never thought she'd be part of it. So that's another thing I wanted to bring up. That's right. This is one thing that got me started telling these ghost stories in the first place. Because I see ghost hunters, thrill seekers, curiosity, whatever they're doing it for. The only reason I'm praying to God and talking to the one I love is because I love them. But you see people in cemeteries or houses where tragedies have happened with their cameras out and their microphones. It's disrespectful. Somebody loved these people. They had lives here at one time, not some circus. It's disrespectful. And I've always thought that. I swear, if I saw somebody around her grave, which is in Auburn, with her mom, if I saw ghost hunters in that cemetery, I would throw them out if I could. And I wouldn't be too gentle about it either. Or going through a house where a tragedy happened that I knew of and knew the people. Like a building I just told you, I had communications with this person that I knew that had committed suicide a few years back. And I believe he definitely haunted the place. If I saw people in there playing their games with their Ouija boards and stuff, I'd be pretty upset. You know, these people who play these ghost hunter things, they need to understand that these were people, they may lock up with a demon or something negative. That's just the very foolish, stupid part about it. But at best, let's say it is actually the spirit of somebody. That they used to be somebody's loved one. Somebody's little darling baby. Somebody's wife or husband or son or daughter. Or mom or dad. Somebody loved them. And if they were a terrible person and nobody loved them, they probably wouldn't. You don't want to meet them anyway. Because if they left this world in that shape, you know, they probably might want to have a little bit of evil sport with you. For whatever purpose. So, I'm pretty certain it was her, and I'll tell you why I'm certain it was her. Because I prayed to God, if it be His will, numerous times, to please allow her to appear to me like He allowed my mother to, and Brian, many, many years ago. And also that, and He did, and also her message to me was something to help me heal and move on with my life. It wasn't something evil or even spooky. She didn't look spooky. Looked like her. That's why it broke my heart to see her again. Because it didn't feel like I was looking at a spirit. It was her. It's the same clothes I recall her that she wore. She had a very distinctive wardrobe of hippie stuff she picked out. She was very picky about it. Her style, you know, and her hair. And it looked like her. And it sounded like her. And as usual, she was a little frustrated with me. She didn't seem angry or hateful, just frustrated. She's like, Tim, you need to move on with your life now. You know? It takes me to that song I covered on here, The Unquiet Grave, which I'll put a link to. Because it's an old Celtic song. That's what the lyrics are about, isn't it? About a guy that mourns the loss of his one he loves and keeps mourning and mourning and mourning. And she finally appears to him, her voice. He didn't see her, he heard her voice. And she pretty much told him to get on with your life. And stop mourning me, she says. All things die, everything, even the flowers. And so get on with your life while you're still here. Before death calls you away too. That reminds me of the lyrics of that song that I liked. And she used to like that song. And I covered it on here. Not knowing that I would wind up living and enacting the story on this. So, I think that's all I had to say. See what you get out of it, if anything. And I know it has helped me. It has helped me. Actually, I've had a good amount of healing. So where I can kind of focus on what I need to do to get through each day and come up with new goals and objectives in life. You know. All right. Thank you. God bless.